All right. Hey, everybody. So, this is Josh Bruce, and today we're going to be talking about the reMarkable digital paper. I think that's respecting the way they would like to be called. With that said, I've seen a lot of different names for this category of device, and I haven't found the definitive one that's sort of caught on. One is e-notebook, e-paper, e-ink tablets. Yeah, so with that said, the category is trying to figure out what it wants to sort of be, and that's fine. Because I think the channel is also trying to figure out what it wants to be. And for right now, given what I posted over on Eightfold Media and your response to it, I think we should go ahead and make this a customer experience channel, at least for now, where we can talk about those sorts of topics of what is it like to be a consumer. And not only that, but how do we get consumers, right? How do we get customers to our products potentially? So with that said, sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I'm totally cheating because I'm trying to reduce how long this entry used to be. So fair warning, this is a reshoot. This section is a reshoot. So basically, what we're going to talk about is we're going to go from me being oblivious to the existence of this device or even this style of device to purchase to unboxing over the next 45 minutes to an hour. Right. We're going to be looking at various aspects as a really deep dive with also very long notes of recommendations and thoughts that I have to try to improve the customer experience overall. Those will be denoted by a star in one of the corners. Um, so if that's what you're interested in, just look for the stars. If that's not what you're interested in, avoid the stars. Um, so with that said, I posted the Productivity 2.0 video over on Eightfold Media and lamented the fact that, yeah, 21st century, 20 years in, still using paper and pen. What's up? And I'm going to give credit to the algorithms, but basically, all the algorithms ever, because algorithms are going to algorithm, and next thing I know, I'm getting all these different things and all these different feeds of basically like, hey, have you checked out the e-notebook thing? And um, stumbled on one, and we'll talk about all of this in more depth later. But basically, stumbled on this one, and then I saw a playlist by a gentleman, and I'll put links to all three of these references down below. But I saw a playlist from a gentleman, and I watched the entire thing because I just think he did a really good job, and that drove me to the next step, which was to hop on the reMarkable website and see for myself what he was talking about or what he was remarking about. So let's take a look at the website. All right, so this is the reMarkable website. With that said, it may not seem that remarkable. And that's actually one of the things that drew me toward this company, which is named reMarkable, and their device, which is also called reMarkable. So one, I have an affinity for play of words, right? So remarkable usually means outstanding or worth remarking about, right? Seth Godin talks about this in the Purple Cow and the associated TED talk that he gave. Related to that, it's also the notion that I can remark, right? So I can erase what's there and mark it again, and not in that pen or pencil and paper kind of a way, where after a while you're going to wear out that paper. In theory, the reMarkable device shouldn't get as worn out as easily as a pen and a piece of paper. Now, there's also the notion of another one that plays close to my heart, just from my own history, is this notion that I think there's a fine line between arrogance and confidence. So, arrogance is basically, say, walking onto a football pitch or onto a basketball court and basically saying, I can dribble the ball better than any of you. I can score all the points ever. I can make a shot from, half field or mid court or whatever, and it's going to go in and nothing but net and da 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 da. And then when you actually get onto the field, it's more like watching a wounded one-legged duck run around. Kind of like if I actually ended up on a football pitch or a basketball court. Um, and so that to me is arrogance. Confidence, on the other hand, is sort of saying all that stuff, right? But then actually doing it. Um, and so I remember back in 2003, four, somewhere in that neighborhood. Basically, it's been a minute, and I got into an interview, and it was for a call center, and they said, we have standards. You're going to have to take so many calls in a day. You're going to have to keep your call times below this. Blah 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 blah. Do you think you can meet those metrics? And my response was, I will meet or beat any metric you put in front of me. With that said, if I think it's unfair to other people, I will let you know. Surprisingly, in hindsight, I actually got that job. And with that said, after like the 6 month review or 1 year review or whenever it was, my manager at the time, as I was walking out the door, having been given the sort of highest, you know, exceeds expectations, I guess. She sort of just said, you know, out of the side of her mouth, she was like, Josh, when I first met you, I thought you were a cocky little kid. And I was like, huh, okay. So what do you think now? And she said, well, you did everything you said you were going to do. So confidence a lot of times will come off as arrogance unless people can witness it being demonstrated. If people can't witness it being demonstrated, then yeah, it's just arrogance. And especially if you end up, on the field and you can't deliver what you said you were going to deliver. So anyway, with that said, reMarkable is in an interesting position, right? So they are a new company, founded I think in 2013. Went through some, I think, funding rounds, and then became or started or did a crowdfunding campaign in 2017. So the device that we're looking at is basically 2 years old, 2 or 3 years old now, and the company itself is only like 6 or 7. So there's trust issues there, right? And the audience that we're going to be typically going for, right, given that reMarkable has two missions, two main sort of things that they really focus on. One is focus, right? So this is not a distraction device like my phone where I can get all the apps ever and do all the things ever. This is much more, you can take notes, you can read books, you can mark up a PDF, and that's it. The other one is that it's digital paper for people who love paper. Now, if you're, we'll classify them as traditionalists, right? And I don't mean that with any political or emotional bounds, but if you're someone who loves using paper and reading books and the smell of paper and the feel of paper, chances are you don't want to go to a website that's all flashy and new and makes you feel like you're going to be taking a huge risk, right? You're going to be more risk averse, right? So if you contrast that with something like Stripe. So with Stripe gears itself more toward entrepreneurs, people who are going to be going into business for themselves and want to be able to take credit cards and maybe build their own e-commerce websites and so on and so forth. These people, myself included, have a tendency to be less risk averse than a lot of other people, so they can be a little bit more outlandish, and they're also going against the traditional credit card processors, right, which are the banks, right? So we're the upstart, we're the rebels, that kind of a thing. So a lot more risk, they can do a lot more things there. Here we're looking at focus, calming, cooling, relaxed, slow down kind of vibe, right? And we get it in spades in their website, right? Very muted colors, cream colored background. The device itself is white. That cream color really helps the device stand out against that background. It also helps with the text because it's basically black and it has a high contrast against that cream color or that light cream color. And really the only things with color, at least when you first get introduced to the website, are this green circle, which kind of doesn't count in this because it's pastel. It's not a high saturated color. It's not as conspicuous as the two other ones, right? And then the two other ones are these brown buy now buttons. So really trying to get us there. And one of the parallels that I'm going to constantly be talking about is Apple. One, because Apple, appreciate it or not, sort of was one of the first ones to really set the bar high on what customer experience should be from the moment of obliviousness up to the moment of acquisition and unboxing. But they're still holding that bar for a lot of other companies, and those other companies are starting to step up to that bar, which is really nice. So anyway, so if I come here and I know that I want this device, I know where to go. I'm going to do the buy now thing. It's going to be great. Now, here's the thing though. I don't trust you, right? You as reMarkable, right? So pretend you're the CEO of reMarkable and I'm kind of talking to you. I don't necessarily trust you. I don't know why that one's not. Why is the BBC logo not showing up? Uh-oh. Um, or no, this is Wired Magazine. Ooh, they changed their website. Sorry. Uh, so they finally did the full release of their 2.0 software, and this used to be the BBC, but now it's Wired Magazine, but the logo's missing. So I don't know what else has changed on this website. Oh, this could get awkward real fast. But anyway, point being, what I want to do is I want to create a vouching block, and so that's what I call this. Is basically these are, and you want it to be as authoritative as you can, right? So this is kind of like when we do celebrity sponsorships on products. But these are institutions, right? So Business Insider is saying this is a good device. Mashable is saying good things about this device. Engadget, The Verge, Popular Mechanics, so on and so forth, right? They've got these nice things to say. And again, it's a vouching block. We say this company's okay, right? And if you've ever seen the movie Goodfellas, there's a line in there that basically says, we just started calling ourselves Goodfellas. If you um, met somebody who didn't know, Johnny or Sarah or whoever, you would just kind of say, yeah, don't worry about them. They're one of us. They're a good fella, right? So it's kind of like what we're doing here with this vouching block. Then we have a video, more text, and then we're going to start to establish a pattern. And I hope they stuck with this pattern because otherwise this unscripted script is going to be just out the window. So you basically have a header. The header is going to be in a serif font. Serif fonts typically denote authority, trust, institution, right? We've been around, right? We've been here. We know what we're doing. Contrast that with a sans serif font, which is what they have for their body copy, and basically that's more of the modern. We're kind of going against the grain, but it's not nearly as counterculture, if you will, as the serif using the serif font, because everybody's starting to use sans serif fonts. Generally speaking, you don't want to have more than 2 fonts. 3 usually is the absolute out, but reMarkable is punching it up even more. They've got 4. And it's kind of interesting because it goes from, and what kind of makes it work, I guess, is that you have a digital, right? There's the mechanical font faces in the serif and the sans serif, and then there's the handwritten. Those are their 2. And then inside of those, they have sub pieces, right? So in the digital fonts or the mechanical fonts, you have the serif, could be Georgia, probably not. That R looks different. Anyway, a font like Georgia, and then you have the sans serif, which could be a font like Helvetica, and I'm not going to inspect Element. It's not that important. Then beneath that you have cursive in the handwritten form, right? And then you also have what I will call comic bubble or something, where basically this is a font that you might see in the bubbles of a comic book, right? So picture of the device, so on and so forth, virtually unlimited pages, right? We're already starting to do the pitch here, right? Which is days of battery, virtually unlimited pages, which is actually true. So your notebook is no longer limited to 100 pages, and you can fit multiple notebooks in this one device, right? So keep going with that, keep going with that. A couple of features: convert handwritten notes to type to text, which is great. You need to be connected to the internet for that to work, and I haven't tried it that much, so I can't speak to the quality of it. Then we have another video. Then we have another vouching block. This time it's from verified customers. So this is more man across the street or woman across the street, um, where I bought this thing. It's kind of like what you're listening to now. If this was more of a sales pitch, right? This is what I think of the device, and you don't. I'm not trying to shove it down your throat or anything like that. It's like, yeah, this was my experience. You might have a different experience, but here it is. And so we've got 758 reviews. That'll become pertinent later. The 4.5 stars all across the board. I will say on this vouching block, this seems odd to me that they show two, but they're like gradient. There's a gradient overlay on either side of it. So it doesn't feel like I'd almost want to see two and then a partial. And it could just be the width of the browser, the way that it's set up, given what I'm shooting at. But it is what it is. Now we're starting to establish a subtly different pattern, a slightly different pattern. And this image is actually the reason that I bought the app or bought the device. I know that sounds weird, but the way I looked at it was is that if somebody could take this much care or had this much of a design eye and thoughtfulness for this image, that would translate into being part of the makeup of the device itself. Right. So one, it's a voyeuristic shot. So this is something where basically, if she was alone and that person back in the maroon shirt in the corner was gone, it would feel more staged. And if there were only that one table and all the other tables were gone and there was nothing in the background, then it would feel even more staged. I mean, it's a staged shot, but it's mimicking a voyeur perspective. Like somebody could have just showed up. That's one of the reasons that you can see part of my monitor here, is that and see my actual background, right? And what's behind me. It's to basically set it up where it's like I'm not in a studio, I'm not staged or anything like that. Now that could be faked, right? Like I could be in a studio, but that's not that's not what I want people to feel when they come here, right? So same thing with this image. And so basically it looks like she's in some type of library at a higher learning institution. And I only say that because, there aren't a lot of bright colors, which denotes children. There aren't a lot of other people, which is kind of a thing in college libraries and university libraries. Also, these desks seem like more of an adult working environment, but it's not an office either, because I would expect to see more desktop computers or something like that. So already starting to get me into that feeling of who this person is that I'm staring at. All right, so now it also has a very shallow depth of field. So if you look at the front of the corner of this book here, it's actually out of focus, right? And then if we go just even behind her elbow, right, off the edge of the table, it's all out of focus. So it really causes this contrast and leads our eyes into what's in focus, because that's what we do. Despite the fact there's this big, bright red, maroon shirt sitting over here on the left-hand side. So once we fall in, human beings have a tendency to look the same direction that other humans are looking, right? So if I'm staring at you and then I glance off your shoulder, chances are you're going to fight the urge or give into it to see what's behind you or what's to the side of you, that sort of a trip, right? So when people have a tendency, especially new companies that I've seen, when they use stock photos, a lot of times I see them like, they have the model just staring right into the camera, and that actually gets us to try to stare at the model, which is not what we're trying to do. We want everything we can do to create a swelling force or a directional force into that device. And it doesn't look like it's, some post process that they went through, right? It looks like they paid somebody or have somebody on staff who's into photography actually create these images. And, this could be the photographer for all I know, right? So it doesn't have to be expensive, I guess is what I'm really driving at. And so anyway, she's staring into the device, so we want to stare into the device. And while we're in the device, there's the pen, and it leads us back up and back down. So it can be an entryway, like a gateway, a point of ingress or egress to the notebook, or to the reMarkable. If that pen was over on the book side, it wouldn't serve that purpose. her arms are crossed, right, in front of her. If they were at her side, like laying limp at her side, or, holding a fence, like a barrier around her stuff, it may not lead us back into that device. But if we come down from her shoulders into her elbows and then across to her hands where we're trying to like get the full arm, we end up back in the device, right? Because her right hand stops us from going to the left hand, and we end up back in the device. If we start on the right shoulder, go down to the elbow, into the hand, into the marker, into the device, right? She's slightly shoulder, like her shoulders are tilted, which shows that she's not trying to be very prim and proper and like fake. It's more of a slightly relaxed kind of a deal. And then the book itself is opened in such a way that it ends up going right into the reMarkable. I can't totally see what's on that reMarkable tablet. It could be handwriting, it could be drawings, it could be whatever. So I don't fully know if they're trying to say this device can replace this book, or she's a college student reading some text and making some notes, right? So no matter what, I just love the fact that I'm trapped in this image in such an elegant way. They do use it in another piece of collateral, only they flip it horizontally, which is kind of a bummer. I would say if you're going to like pick an orientation and kind of stick with it, it'd be different if we had like more of the image off to the right and could slide her over to make the space. But anyhow, when I see stuff like this, it always reminds me of one of my favorite images, which is Rosie the Riveter. And so, the woman with her sleeve rolled up and she's flexing and, doing that thing. And then she's got a speech bubble that says, "We can do it." Also staring directly into the camera, but it works out a little bit better just because of, anyway, whatever. So basically the "we can do it," right? There's so many forces that keep you from falling off the edge of that picture and all lead back up to that "we can do it," right? So same concept here. Now, whether or not they intentionally did it, I don't know. But then, so back to the establishment of a new pattern. We have a picture, we have a header, and then we have the sans serif, and then we have the device, right? And basically just one or two features of the device. And then we go into another picture. Near as I can tell, this is the same model. Near as I can tell, she's wearing the same outfit. Just the other one has she's got a jacket on. But it's playing the same rules. It's playing by the same exact rules. Basically, we have the line of the couch leads us into her. We have the back of the couch, which also keeps us leading into her, but her elbow comes off the edge of the image. And the screen, the fact that it's 100% horizontal width does help us from falling off the edges. But there are things that try to keep us from falling off the edge. There's contrast, right? We're using the black unitard it looks like that she's wearing, as well as the brownness of her skin to be a contrast to the tablet itself. And she's looking at the device, right? We can tell because her chin is pointed at the device. We can see where she's kind of facing. And again, voyeuristic shot. This could very easily be me walking from behind her or sitting in a chair next to her, and I just happen to glance over and see this shot. So then we have a header, more text, another feature, and then another picture. Now this breaks that same pattern, right? And it's good. It could be good and could be bad, right? Because when you're trying to establish trust, you really want to be patterned, right? You want to establish those patterns that basically evoke trust and consistency, because humans typically don't like consistency. We don't react well to change. So now we have an image. It's a little bit more desaturated. We have some text on top of it that basically says the only tablet that helps you focus. And again, a grand claim, side of arrogance. But if that's actually turns out to be true, confidence. But it's weird that it's the first image we've run into that has this serifed font on top of an image. It's also the first image that we've hit that's really desaturated, like it looks like it's raining. And I'm not sure if that's what we were going for on purpose, because that doesn't look like rain on the glass. It either looks like frozen ice, not that you can have unfrozen ice, but it looks like ice, or that it's just the textured or frosted windows. This image also doesn't have the same treatment as the others. Like there's this weird gradient, and I don't know if that's actually an artifact of the image or something that happened with Photoshop while manipulating all of this. With that said, from a pure linear perspective, everything's the same. You've got some nice contrast to bring out the device. Looks like we did some burning back here, maybe some dodging around her hands though. And basically back into the device, pen back into the device, the verticals of the window back into the device, horizontals back into her or him, could be, and back into the device, right? Like so. Anyhow, and then all of a sudden we get into this text. It's a completely different grid. Like this is the most stable. So when you're doing unstable, radical things, diagonals are usually the way to go. So something like this would be more unstable and radical, right? Whereas this is more authority. We're just here. We're doing our thing. So, and I do appreciate it from the perspective of the intent is for this to be read, but it does kind of throw me a little bit when it comes to the grid. Then we get into like cloud because they do have one. The availability across to sync with other devices, which is available on the Mac, Windows, and Android. The wired quote, and again, another one of those, like ink on paper, unlike any other digital device, right? So we're starting to establish this notion that reminds me of another Seth Godin conversation, at least I think it was Seth, is basically alternative milks, right? So like silk and almond milk. So when they first came out, they put them near things that they were made out of, right? So basically, we're not nuts, we're almond milk. We're basically liquefied nuts, and we're liquefied soy nuts, and nobody bought it, and it wasn't refrigerated, so nobody was making the association with milk. And so a marketing agency basically said, put it in the fridge next to the rest of the milk. If you're trying to be a replacement for milk, don't be an alternative to nuts, right? So kind of establishing that here. And when we get into our Redux, right, because that's what I'm kind of looking at doing with a lot of this is basically, what areas of improvement can we do? We'll talk more about that. So then we go into the canvas, the differences between a traditional tablet versus the reMarkable. Then we have a Macworld review, right? So another vouching block, but this is somewhere in between, right? Because an institution, we consider the BBC to be an institution. Wired is an institution. We consider a customer to be, again, the person across the street. And so when you bring up Macworld, it's somewhere in the middle, right? Because Macworld is a smaller company. They have not been established as the establishment and that sort of a deal, but you also don't know them, right? Like you don't know Joe. If Joe, I think one of the guys' names is like that. But anyway, if you don't know either one of these people, it's not them, it's Macworld, right? So anyway, see how people use the reMarkable. They have a hashtag, so we're getting into marketing. And then we basically have an Instagram wall. And I don't know how much this Instagram wall is truly random versus curated, but the fact that I can load more starts to make me feel like it's less curated than it probably really is, right? So it makes me feel like, yeah, they're just displaying, people's Instagram walls. And you can only bring up, I think, two or three times. So then we get into the marker. I would actually like to have seen this part of the website stop for just a second and basically say, buy now or go to accessories, right? So the accessories, all the accessories go into another place, maybe before the marker or after the marker. But anyway, with that said, header, serif header, sans serif or serif italicized tagline. Here's a picture of the device. Here's a couple of things that it has going for itself: tilt and pressure sensitive and no charging required. That's a big selling point for me. It does have a nib in the barrel. They also have a signature version, which is made out of aluminum. I have heard some criticism. Oh, and the signature comes with 3, not 1. I have heard criticism that the plunger actually does work, but it doesn't do anything mechanically or digitally to alter the feel of the device. So it's not really, why have that? And my argument or sentiment to that is that some people really just like to use pens as fidget toys. And so by having the lapel clip, you can do the snappy thing. And by having a plunger that actually works, you can do the clicky thing. Hopefully, it doesn't actually click because, oh my God, that's annoying. Like make the actual clicking sounds. And people in the flow arts community actually do purchase tools that do this. You know, that basically they don't even, those things don't even write, but they'll mimic the feel of a pen and the weight of a pen so that you can do your tricks with a pen. Comparing the two, then we get into the folio. I wouldn't really call this a folio. This to me is a sleeve because for me, a folio has a hinge with a front and back cover. Um, and so, yeah, basically you'd have, I guess you could say there's a cover which has no back, and then there's a folio which has a back and a front with a hinge, and then there's a sleeve which has no openings on the top or the bottom. Like that's kind of how I usually place things. Here we break all the patterns ever, so we have this serifed headline, and then now we have serifed body copy. It's not italicized, and again we have serifed body copy above and below this button. With that said, it is kind of a cheeky nod to the audience that basically says, you know, congratulations, you have now learned about the key aspects of reMarkable. And it's like, do you want to buy one now? Like, we didn't bug you that entire time, and I do give them props for that. That basically there is, so there's this right. If you want to bring up the buy now button real quick, you know, it is there. So you don't have to scroll all the way back up to the top. So let's do the buy now thing. Again, we're trying to establish trust. This is important, and we get the low stock thing, which you know does try to get people to purchase faster. And so now we just have product shots. You know, forget the marketing language, forget all that crap. This is the device. You know, front back marker done. Front back marker done, but we have it in handwriting. The first one was looking at the menu, right? Check out this UI. And then this last one is what it looks like in the box. So it kind of makes this video a little unnecessary. But anyway, that's what's there. Trying to establish trust. Get to know me, see me, right? So now we also have this conspicuous thing that breaks across the image that says satisfaction guarantee 100% money back. Trust. And we made it conspicuous by making it break into this otherwise gray image, right? Not only that, but it's a good design lead in to the stuff that's on the right, which is basically the name of the device itself, the reviews, 728 instead of 758. Kind of reminds me of views on YouTube where you know you can see it in your feed and it's like 500, and then you go to the actual page, it's like 600. So anyway, that does make me a little concerned because I would think that this would be 758 and the other one might be 728, right? Like the device itself would have more instead of less. Then we have another conspicuous button. This one's saturated, or it's not a button. Another conspicuous label that's saturated, again, to try to build trust. Free express shipping. 100% money back guarantee, 4.5 stars from people who care, and free express shipping. Like we're really trying to get you to trust us and hit that button. There are only two options. Again, going back to not Microsoft, going back to Apple. This is kind of like configuring your devices, right? There's not a lot of options there. Some people that's a real point of contention and irritation. Other people are like, thank God, I don't have to make a decision. You can buy new or refurbished. You know, these are sort of your options, and you can get more details. 1 year warranty, looks like new, blah blah blah. It is certified, and everything like that. So add it to the cart. Reiterate what we just told you. You can get it in 3 to 5 days. This actually seems to adjust based on volume, because I think last time I was here it was like 2 to 3 days. So that's actually kudos to them for setting valid expectations, because I got mine in like 2 or 3 days, and that's what it said, and that impressed me that I got it when they said I would. And then 30-day return, so the money back guarantee thing, and then secure checkout. So trust. We're not available necessarily in stores, but we do have secure checkout. We accept multiple payment methods, and then there's just more stuff, right? So that's pretty much the website. Now, let's get to the unboxing because all right, so this is the box that the device comes in. Now, when it gets shipped to you, or at least when it got shipped to me, it was in a more like a standard shipping box, so it's a lot bigger than the device itself. With that said, what I would like to have seen is some type of packaging material that would actually keep it from rattling around, right? So we choose standard package or box sizes to maybe reduce costs and things like that, which is totally understandable. With that said, when a user gets this and it can sort of be thrown from side to side within the box like a really large rattle, it becomes a little disquieting. So maybe just a piece of recycled paper if we want to stick with the paper theme, which we do with regard to the Redux. And we also have the idea of those air package things, air pouches or whatever, just something that will keep it from rattling around too much. So take it out, it's covered in shrink wrap. The build of this box is actually kind of like a book. So you basically have this binding material looking stuff, and then this gap between the lip and here. So it actually gives you a perfect spot to put your knife to take the shrink wrap off. Now, again, we sort of have on the front here, better paper, better thinking, and basically, again, it can be taken as a play on words, right? Better thinking, well, this, or better paper, well, this isn't paper, it's a digital device, right? Or at least I thought I was getting a digital device. And so, but it can do things that paper can't, right? Better thinking. Again, this could be in terms of the question of focus. You know, this device isn't going to throw everything at you all at once and give you 50,000 ways to not get stuff done. But it could also be that sort of fine line between arrogance and confidence again, where it's basically like, we've put a lot of thought into this, we're not going anywhere, and we think that you're going to appreciate that thought, right? The thought that went into making this device. So the line art on the outside here, or on the front cover, is actual size. It is the actual size of the device, so I appreciated that little touch. The reMarkable logo is a logo type. There is a dual variant, and basically the reason I bring this up is that this packaging does feel a little bit over branded for me. And mainly it's because as a logo type, I want to read it, so it becomes a stopgap. Whereas if it was the dual variant, then I could extrapolate for myself because I bought this thing. I know what it is. And so again, making parallels between all the things timing, you know, Apple in 1984, they also had been around for about 7 years. And that's when they released the Macintosh. And, you know, of course, the outside of the Macintosh had logos, the apple with the bite taken out of it. With that said, when you opened it, it also had 2 stickers of the the Apple logo that you put on your car, and then so like you're part of the club, and that's what they were doing back then, is really trying to build a community using the actual apples. Apple logo types. Now they do it through uniqueness in design, right? Like the earbuds when they first came out were stark white. And basically that was the marketing around it. So become part of the club, if you will. So, and not from Apple, right? That was part of the community itself. So anyway, all that to say, I do think it's over-marketed. And also with the Macintosh, there were back. Like that Apple logo was just flipping everywhere. But with a jewel or an image, it's a lot easier for the brain to kind of wash over it and just get it without awareness. Whereas with a logo type, I want to read it. I want to stop and read it. So with that said, on the side, we have a line art of the marker, which is also actual size. Again, I really appreciate that. Another logo. And then on the back, we have our line art of what's in the box, and then a nice stark white so that we can get a good read on the UPC code, and we can see all the FCC and legal jargon. And one of the things that I did appreciate is this satin tab. So it is a magnetic clasp, and it just gives it just that little bit extra without becoming extra. With that said, it's, chances are I'm going to be opening it down on a tabletop or something, because I can't really open it this way because it's too thick for the average size hand. And so putting it down on the table, that satin clip or clasp does become a little bit hard to get your hands on. We could either make it longer, or you could stick it in the middle of the in the side, but I don't want to cover up the marker necessarily. So there's that. Maybe we could maybe there's enough room to slide the marker up or something. But anyway, when I opened this and I saw this part, it made me think of anticipation building. And the most universal reference that I can find, or the most accessible reference that I can think of, is a movie called Serendipity. And basically the heroine of the movie is named Sarah, and she comes home one night and her boyfriend has, laid flower petals all over the floor. God, I don't want to clean that up later, but lit a bunch of candles, turned the lights down low, and there's just this big box in the center. Like Sarah could get in it and stand there with him in it, standing next to her, and still have room to do things, right? So she gets to the box and she opens it, and there's these, the two side flaps, and she starts grabbing tissue paper, because it's all wrapped in like tissue paper. And then she pulls out a smaller box, and he's put a table next to the bigger box so that she can put the smaller box on it. She opens that. It too has all this tissue paper, and she's just left, right, left, right, left, right. And that's what this started to feel like. Like I'm building this anticipation. I got the cellophane off, or the shrink wrap off. Now I'm in and I open it, and what do I got? Nothing. Like I'm expecting the device. And again, it's, to draw a parallel to Apple, it's kind of like their vacuum seal of their boxes. One, it denotes communication of engineering excellence. Like the bottom of our box is matched with the top of our boxes, to the point that there's a vacuum seal that's created. And same thing that's getting communicated here with these really hard boards and the magnetic clasp, right? We care. We put care into the small details. But with the iPad, for example, when the bottom pops out and you move it to the side, you get the device. We didn't get that experience here. We got another flap. And so then you bring this over, right? And it's a whole new ball game. Or now we've actually got the tablet. So first things first, before we get too far into this, because the big Redux is going to be on the box itself, but I'm going to try to take it for each experience as well. I don't like that this is from right to left again. What I'm thinking is that to get sort of that tissue paper thing of left, and then using your right hand. See, I'm telling you, that strap. The left, and throwing it to the side. It would be nice if this opened actually from the left, so that now I'm coming across with my other hand, pulling it up this way, and then we get this open. Now, a couple of things. One, I have a row of dead pixels here. I've contacted support, so we're also going to get to chat about what the support experience looks like, or the support aspect of the customer experience, so that's good. So pay no attention. With that said, I also was really disappointed to see this piece of foam here, right? So basically the way this box is made is that we have this outside, which is these really hard boards, and then you have the actual tray, right? This piece here that it's basically just a ring that's glued onto this and fastened onto here, and glued securely to the back. And then this piece of paper is glued inside of the box. And I don't know if this is an OEM solution, like you can get this off the shelf, or if this is something that is actually designed by reMarkable itself. So again, not sure how much customization we have here, but this piece of foam is just sprayed on here, I think, like using spray adhesive. And if we look, it's sort of off center as well. And it feels out of place, especially since I'm not expecting to see something covering the screen. I don't expect the same level of protection being necessary for an e-ink display as I do an LCD monitor or an LED device. So, but even with something like the iPad that has glass and an LED, like you don't get this protection beyond the hard board. So instead, I would like to just kind of strip that off. And if we wanted to do something similar to what Apple does to protect the glass displays on their laptops from off-gassing from the keys, like they put that onion skin paper down, we could do something similar with like either a piece of paper or a recyclable foam, right? Where it's just a sheet of paper. It's not part of the flap. It's not actually physically part of the box, but it's just something that, you know, can cover it, protect it a little bit, give a vague impression of what's inside. I really do appreciate, I could see that being a thing. So now we're in, and I think this is a little weird that this notch is here just because the power button doesn't seem to be that big. This part here, this experience was kind of annoying from the perspective that if I leave the marker in there, it can be, and I'm not over exaggerating here, I promise, it can be a little on the difficult side to lift it out. So what I found is that the first thing that I grabbed was not the tablet, it was the marker. And we'll talk about this during the Redux. Because once you take the marker out, now all of a sudden, I actually have the leverage, right, to get my thumb in here to actually bring the device up. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. Start that up. And I'm really glad that I got the 2.0 software upgrade today. But anyhow, so underneath the device, we basically have the cable, the quick start guide, and the nibs. Now with the cable, I don't understand necessarily why this finger cutout is there, because chances are I'm not going to try to get in there, get to it this way. I'm actually going to just come the easier way and pull it out, right? So we have the logo type, and if we take the cable out, you can see the dual variant of the logo type. And basically, I appreciate it from the perspective that, you know, it shows me where up is, because we basically have a standard USB and a mini or micro USB on the other end. And it shows us which way is up, like which way should be facing the top of the connector. Having said that, I think, you know, having these be embossed, right, would be nice. I see a lot more USB cables like that now. Or again, doing the nod to Apple, making this color sort of the same color as the box, which is sort of the same color as the screen. And also on that score, if we come back out, this paper here, which is a very fine-tooth paper, feels very similar to the canvas that's on the device, which I thought was a good touch. And it may not have been done on purpose, but it's just these things that you keep hitting that make you kind of go, yeah, no, I'm feeling pretty confident about this purchase. So the quick start guide. Oh, one of the other things that I liked about this and noticed pretty well right away is that one, I'm just going to put this to sleep real quick. One, the 3 buttons that are at the bottom here, and we'll cover this more in the hardware review, I think, they're pretty well flush to the device. So I really appreciated that. And same thing here. And the reason that this becomes kind of impressive is that none of these things are the same width. So for each one of these holes that we have bored out, we've literally modified the hole in such a way that it's pretty much flat against the top here. So kudos to them for that. The quick guide itself, it's just a 6-panel, small font, small image. We'll talk about that here in a second. And then the reMarkable nibs logo. You get 8. So there's 8 in here plus the extraction tool. There's 1 in the barrel and then 1 in the tip of the marker. So you're pretty well covered for nibs. Now, the foam itself is very sturdy, so I'm not concerned that the device actually was rolling around. Mainly it was just the quick start guide. So let's talk about this though. So one, what I would like to see is the cable box actually become a full box, because while this line that gets created is awesome, right? Like this black line, it seems so weird and so out of place that then we have sort of this stark white half circle sticking out on either side. Whereas if this was just a full black box, and maybe even set up with the pincher grasp like we have for the nibs, instead of this, where it's just the one, where I'm just going to grab it on both sides of the box, would be better, a better experience. Now, the other thing is that I would like to see the marker not actually be on the top of the box, right? Because we did have that issue. And when you first see the device, it is wrapped in a cellophane folio, but just unlike where you get with the laptops with Apple and with their iPads, it didn't have necessarily a pull tab. It had a sticker that I kind of got off and was able to get to the device. So if we go back to this concept of digging for the device, right? Basically, you end up with this right to left opening, and then we're going to go left to right opening, another panel. There might be that piece of foam paper, but we move that out of the way, and there's nothing but the device, right? And then I can pull it up from the right to the left, which is where that cellophane is, and that basically gives us, if we can cheat this action, right, we get this experience of pulling it and let me keep up with it, and now I have my device and I'm able to look at it, and I can go through the onboarding experience. And the onboarding experience for this thing is great. You turn it on, it's the first thing that comes up. It asks you to connect to Wi-Fi. You connect to Wi-Fi. If you want to do syncing, you will have to create a reMarkable account. So there is that. You set it up. Takes no time at all. You can do it all from the device, and then you just hit next, and it's going to keep booting up. And so then while that is booting up and doing its thing, I can basically come in here and start looking at what else is in my toy box. And what I'm thinking is basically, if we had the marker up here and then the quick start guide, right? Because now I can grab the marker and start looking it over and making sure that it's going to be correct. And I can put the cable and the nibs, or the marker tips as they call them, here. And if this is a full-size box, it's going to be roughly the same width as the marker. And so now we have everything sort of lined up this way, and we can actually get rid of all of the notches and the marker from being inside of here. Now, the other thing is that if we actually get rid of this foam and replace it with that one sheet of foam, or get rid of the foam altogether, then what we can do with the quick start guide is actually put that here. So basically you'd have 3 panels in 2 separate rows on the inside to basically show people this is what you're getting yourself into, essentially. And we can increase the size of the images, increase the size of the text to something more approaching this, which would be easier to read if you have limited vision. Now, the other part is that we could also perforate here. So if you want to get rid of the box but keep the quick start guide, you can just pull, rip this part off of the box. And it's roughly the size of a manila folder. You could probably we could probably score it in such a way that you could fold it down, what have you. But if you're more like me, where I'm actually going to keep the box because I move around a lot, I can just leave it right there, and I don't ever have to worry about it getting lost, right? I don't have to worry about somebody else opening the box, looking at the instructions, and accidentally throwing them away. So there's that, and then that gives us way more space here to basically go here. This is your marker. These are the tips for the marker. This is the cable for the device, and really play on that focus concept. So I feel like I've been talking forever, so I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit. All right, so now let's get to the box itself. So we're the non-paper. We're basically, well, we're not the non-paper. We're more paper than we are tablet, and that's sort of where it seems we're pushing, right? And I don't know if these are available in stores. I mean, I would imagine so, with given that there's a UPC code, or there's at least plans to get these inside of stores. And I think it would be interesting is if we look at our paper analog cousins on what they're doing. So I ran out and I bought a piece or a reMarkable. So a reMarkable is really fascinating to me because one, it's paper, but two, it's the greatest wrapping job I've ever seen. Like, this is the way I want to be able to wrap presents to people. So you basically just have this really nice 45-degree here. The other flap comes down there. It's perfectly sealed, very tight. There's, if you drew a line down the center, these two pieces that create this other line here, basically go equidistant over each other. I mean, it's just awesome. Sorry, I don't know where my camera cut out, but that's where I left off that sentence. So anyway, it's really cool. And not only that, it's definitely big enough to hold the paper. So if we had a box that actually looked like a ream of paper sitting on a shelf next to a ream of paper, now all of a sudden better paper, better thinking becomes a really compelling construct. And we could also put that same box next to tablets and say better paper, better thinking, and then it becomes a cognitive dissonance curiosity thing, right? So with that said, that's kind of where I'm going to take the inspiration for this. So let's clear this off. Okay, so let's go ahead and wake it up. I really do appreciate that I got the new software, so we're going to do a quick sheet. So with that said, I also don't know how to use the new software, so pardon the bumps. All right, so on the front, like on the face of it, let's, oops. So I got my fine liner, black. Yeah, let's go with a medium. All right. So on the face of it, so still want to have the actual size of the device on the outside of the box. And better paper, better thinking. Go ahead and remove the logo, right? Because we're not, the brand will, at least from my perspective, the name of the brand will come in due time. So basically that's it. That's, just stick that on a shelf right next to some paper, and we'll make that happen. So this is the front. So there's our front. And now let's go ahead and so just like, and we'll get into this when I get to the paper or to the software reviews, but just like this shows what device I'm using, what I've selected, this would be cool too. Instead of the 3 separate lines, because it belies the fact that you can pick the color in here, it would be nice just to have the thickness of the line in the color that I've chosen. White might be a little difficult. So anyhow, then basically we have the sides, right? And like I said, one of the things that I appreciate about the box is that it's got that actual size of the marker there. And one of the things that I liked about the device when I first took it out is that, one, it's really, really light, but it's also really, really thin, right? So this, from the digital side of the house, weighs about the same as an iPad mini. From the analog side of the house, weighs about the same as my composition book. From a thickness perspective, again, it's about the same as like an iPad Air, somewhere around that neighborhood. And from the analog side of the house, it's basically 1/2 to 2/3 the thickness of my composition book. And so what I would like to see us do, right? Sorry, I keep changing my mind on what I want to do here. So like what marker I want to use, is actually have the profile of the device. Right? So you have the profile of the device, that's actual size. You have the marker, that's actual size. And then you can even have the nibs or marker tips, right? So basically, from looking on the outside of the box, a potential user could end up seeing what's in the box without hitting the what's in the box step, right? So let's go ahead and go here to our thick. So this is going to be the sides. And next, let's talk about the top and the bottom. So the top and the bottom, they are slightly thinner than the sides, right? And this is where we'd have the print, because I don't want to change necessarily anything about that experience, right? I still like the satin thing. I still like the unfolding thing. Maybe make the top and the bottom a little bit more flush. But basically just part of that print that's on the paper, go ahead and create that gift wrap kind of vibe. And then here, that's where we could actually put the reMarkable. So then somebody is basically, they grab the box and they're like, what's this? And then they look at the top of the box and, oh, it's a thing for the reMarkable. Oh, look at the side of this thing. Wait, that can't be the real thickness, and so on and so forth. And I think if we move the line art for the marker down a little bit, there is enough room to actually get the thickness of the device in there. Oops. I kind of do wish I could turn that part off. I'm not sure if I can, though. They've started adding gestures, but one of the things that I am constantly doing is this number. And so you can gesture yourself into a problem. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. All right, so okay, so now we get to the back. So with the back, we already have this two-tone thing, but there's not really a reason, right? Because everything else is the solid sort of olive cool gray, right? But the back has this stark white thing. But if we have sort of this seam coming off the bottom of the top and bottom, then we can translate that seam here. Then we can do what's in the box, right? And basically what I think would be nice here is to build further on that association, where basically the tablet has a cable and then the marker has nibs, right? Then over here, this is on the right hand side, this is where the FCC and policy and all of that stuff goes. And that gives us these two rather large sections to do with what we will. Here we may want to do another vouch block. So this becomes, whatever our favorite quote is. And maybe this is from Wired. And basically, because it's printing, what we could do is we could do these in batches. I don't know how difficult it would be, but not basically make it feel a little bit more random, like the old Snapple bottle caps. I think they still do it, where you could lift it up and see like an inspirational quote. Dove does it with some of their chocolates as well. But yeah, just a nice little voucher block that says hey. And we may even want to switch these, where what's in the box goes at the bottom and then that quote comes up here, because what I'd like to see over here is sort of body copy, and maybe it's just sort of a history, like your story, the reMarkable story of 2013 we started, this is what we did, this is what we did, this is what we did. 2017 we did crowdfunding and we got blah 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 blah, right? Like basically just who are you? So imagine when somebody's first introduction to the reMarkable is, I've walked into a store and maybe it's not that I don't have access to the internet right then and there, but it's more convenient for me to look and inspect the box than it is for me to bust out my phone that I can barely hold in my hand. Sorry, I'm not bitter, but basically, so this becomes the back, right? And somebody who comes into a store can sort of see and get all the information that they need to make a relatively informed decision. We want to sort of help the customer as much as possible. Um, so, those are sort of my thoughts on what I think would be um, interesting for reMarkable to kind of do with the experience. Now, the experience so far has been really well done, right? I mean, they've done some remarkable things worth remarking about. Just in the nature of creating this device, designing the device, giving us reasons to trust them as a company, that basically they're not going to be like some of the other Kickstarters I'm sure you've heard about that never actually came to fruition. All right, so that's the reMarkable, from basically me being totally oblivious all the way up to the unboxing and all points in between, including throwing in some things that I think would make it just a little bit more reMarkable, um, especially if it's on a shelf. And I have to say, I'm really impressed with this thing. You know, just how light it is, how big it is. I don't feel weird holding it in all sorts of different ways, putting it under my arm. It doesn't slide out. I'm not flexing here. I'm just, it's just under my arm like I would do with my composition book. And yeah, so I dig it. With that said, as always, thank you so much for making the time. I definitely do appreciate it, and I'll see you around.